Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Let the Right Ones In podcast. We're your hosts, T.
And Matt.
So, we're mainly going to be talking about Tiger King, but since I've been gone for like a month now? When was the last time I uploaded? Probably like a month. Yeah, I'm not even going to bother to check. It was probably like a month. After I'm like, I'm not uploading for like a week. And it's now a month. And now I'm rambling. So, hello. How is everyone? Are you doing okay during this trying time? I'm not. Just kidding. I'm okay.
I'm doing great. There are a lot of new video games out that we've been into. Well, that I've been into.
I've just been mostly playing Animal Crossing and Mario Kart.
Yeah, I've been on Resident Evil 3 Remake, Doom Eternal, Animal Crossing. We got Breath of the Wild today. I haven't had a chance to try that out yet.
And I got Splatoon 2 for myself, which I have not really played. So there's that in the pocket. I am still employed, thankfully. I'm working from home, but things are not looking too hot in my state. I don't live in New York, but I live in another, kind of high number state. And, it's not looking that great for people here, but we're getting through it. We're fine.
My previous place of employment has closed.
Much like every other place around the country. So, yeah, financially, physically, we're fine here. And I did mention all this in a live stream, but that live stream is no longer, because I sung 15 seconds of a Queen song twice, and YouTube was like, nah, this whole hour and a half, nah, forget it. And they took it off, and they took it down, and I didn't feel like fighting about it. So the upload before this is the last 6 minutes, and I was basically just bitching about what YouTube did to me. So there's that. I was really pissed, you guys. That whole hour and a half down the drain, because YouTube was like, you're singing a song terribly, go fuck yourself. But it kind of is what it is. It's no big deal. So yeah, that's that. I'm going to try to be streaming more and back to uploading, but probably not as frequently, because I think the every video a week thing is not for me. Kind of burns me out, and then I end up disappearing for a month. So I'll try to taper off to avoid not disappearing. I know I don't have a big audience or anything like that, and I know I'm rambling, and no one probably we just want to hear about Tiger King. So we'll get on into that. So what are your general thoughts, Matthias?
Oof.
Oh, also, if it sounds different, we have a different setup. We're not being ghetto anymore. We have somewhat of a professional setup now, but it's still probably echoey in the room. There's nothing I can do about that. But anyway, back to late topic.
Well, Joe Exotic is a piece of crap. That's for sure.
Well, I guess, do you want to talk about people first, and then, we've talked about it in private.
I'll just give general thoughts on each one where I cast.
Yeah.
Cast in quotations, because it is reality.
Yeah, and then, kind of shenanigans within the show.
Okay, well, of course we just start with the man of the hour, Joe Exotic.
He is quite the character. I will say, though, that I kind of wish they showed more of how he was before he took on this whole Tiger King persona, before he became, Mr. Joe Exotic. That would have been cool. They did show, a few clips of that during the end, but I think the whole thing, though, if I'm being, real, was a little sensational for, everybody involved. I know everyone's done, shitty things, but I felt like the documentary was a little sensational, and the way it told the story.
Yeah, they definitely wanted to make sure everyone looked like the bad guy, when I think there's one person that, in my opinion, is clearly a cut above all the rest. I mean, some of Joe's, I don't know if you want to get into talking about Joe, each of the, like everybody we saw, each of Joe's minor employees, but some of them seemed to like misguided to work at this place, but in the end, all right people. Like the guy with the longer hair that was always wearing the sunglasses, he seemed like an all right dude. He actually did seem to, he seemed torn up when speaking about some of the animals' deaths. So he clearly cared somewhat. Maybe not enough to not work there, but...
And then the one manager guy as well, like, he seemed pretty torn up about, like, some of the animals. Like, I think he wanted to take 2 of the cats with him, but they were like, nah, bruh, you can't be taking those out of here.
Yeah, the guy with both the legs missing.
Yeah, that guy. Sorry if we don't know names. It's been like 2 weeks since I watched it, and sometimes I have the brain capacity of a flea. So...
But yeah, to speak about the end, the part they show at the end, I don't know if you want to talk about that later or not.
Well, it doesn't matter. We can talk about it now.
Okay, at the end, they do show a little bit of Joe Exotic before he...
became the Tiger King.
Yeah, became Joe Exotic when he was still Joseph Maldonado, I believe is his name before that. And he's, rallying people against cub petting, against breeding. All the things he ended up doing. And one of his employees kind of, talks, about, like, it was a lot different before all the money came in. And money does change people.
I also think for Joe, a lot of it was attention, too. He seemed to really have a thing for needing and wanting attention. And so I think he thought... the bigger of this persona I put on and the more outlandish shit I do, the more people are going to look at me and give me attention. And that kind of took the focus off of caring for the animals and the cats, and it just really became about him and seeking attention and validation. But that's just my personal thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, I don't feel bad for Joe Exotic now with everything he's done. Because I'm a huge animal lover, vegan, the whole 9 yards, as you would say. But, yeah, so I don't feel bad for him, but it is kind of tragic in a way.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I've seen a lot of people before I took a social media hiatus, partially, where people were like, free Joe Exotic. And then I was, like, watching the thing, and I'm like, no, keep his ass in jail, you guys. Like, the attempted murder thing... like, maybe. Oh, by the way, this does have spoilers. I probably should have said that earlier. But it's all real. I mean, you can look this up. All of this shit happened. But as far as, like, the attempted murder stuff, I definitely think that was entrapment. Like, he was clearly set up for that. And, yeah, don't get me wrong, he did do some fucked up shit. Like, having... like, the blow-up doll of, like, Carol and putting dildos in its mouth and, like, shooting at it and blowing it up and, like, sending kind of threats to her. Like, that's not cool. And so I felt like kind of all of that and his, like, hatred and disdain towards her was an easy way to be, like, for Jeff and the other guy, I think his name was James, to take the zoo from him. Like, how can we get Joe out of here completely? Oh, here's how. We'll entrap the motherfucker. So...
So now do you want to talk about, I guess, Jeff Lowe now?
Yeah, I guess we can switch to Jeff now. So, Jeff is obviously not a good guy. And I know he, like, went on as an investor for it. So basically what happens is Jeff is supposed to be, like, this millionaire guy who's kind of portrayed as, like, for a little bit at least... the savior of the GW Zoo, which is Joe Exotic's zoo. And he comes in and he invests in the place, but he really, like, takes it under from Joe. His whole deal is apparently him and his wife are swingers, and they would go to Vegas all the time with, like, tiger cubs in suitcases and stuff, and let people pet them and stuff like that. So obviously, didn't give a shit about any kind of animal. Obviously, because that's not cool to do to, like, even a, like, tiger cub being in a suitcase for God knows how long. That's obviously not safe. And then his care of the zoo was obviously pretty shitty as well, especially after Joe wasn't around. They kicked him out. So, yeah, not really the biggest fan of Jeff.
Yeah, smuggling the animals in the suitcases is one of the main ways they're sold. And he was heading down to Las Vegas with these animals. And so you have to... What I would wonder is how many of these tiger cubs didn't come back because they got sold by this dude down there. Because, they're only useful for cub petting for a couple weeks before they become, dangerous for a guest to hold. So, yeah, I have no... But, of course, they couldn't bring that up because then they'd have to admit there was some selling going on. And, of course, another thing is that a lot of these cubs were probably just killed off if they couldn't find a buyer quick enough.
Also, Jeff kept some pretty shady company. Like that James guy, the kind... I don't want to say fat, but, the more portly guy. He was also pretty shady because he was the one who kind of helped set things up with the FBI.
No, he was a friend of Joe's before.
Oh, they were like a casual friend. But I think him and Jeff were close, though, right?
Yeah, I also believe he used to be in the reptile trade it mentioned near the beginning. I don't know if that's what he does now. It seemed like, he owned like a pawn shop at the end?
Yeah, I think something like that.
Some kind of smaller shop. But, yeah, the FBI busts him for having a parakeet without the...
I thought it was a lemur.
Oh, it was a lemur, yeah. Without the papers he needed for it. Because it's an exotic animal. And then, it basically tells him, you can go to jail or you can be an informer.
And then he kind of brings Jeff into that fold. And then there goes the further entrapment. Because the person who Joe apparently paid and hired to go out and kill Carol Baskin was, one of Jeff's boys.
Well, I mean, there was the exchange of money, so let's not, entirely exonerate Joe Exotic. I don't feel bad for Joe Exotic at all. Because, Jeff Lowe strikes me as Joe Exotic, but smarter. That's
fair.
really it. Just as much of a criminal. They're both criminals. They're both terrible people. They both do terrible things. But it's just, survival of the fittest in the criminal world of any type.
I guess my sympathies with Joe kind of only lie at him being a simpleton and an attention seeker. As a former attention seeker myself, you can relate to that. Like, once you get a certain amount of attention, like, that does become addicting. Like, you just want more and more and more and more and more. But also, like, Joe's a dumbass. Like, he's a simpleton. And so, like, I personally find it hard to believe that... Now, he would talk about killing Carol, sure. And I totally believe that he probably did have bad intentions towards her. But as far as, like, him actually going out there and doing it without someone, like, nudging him along, I have a hard time believing that, to be honest.
I don't, honestly. Everyone, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people have been like, oh, man, I wish that bitch was dead. I wish that asshole boss was dead. But that's basically as far as it goes. You just make some offhanded comment with the other employees, fellow employees at several workplaces, man, I wish I could beat that dude to the bat. And, you just chuckle. Because, it's all a joke. Sometimes you get frustrated and you speak with some extreme hyperbole or whatever. Whereas Joe was clearly taking it to a whole other level, like simulated murder almost. It was clearly something that was on his mind, not just a few seconds when Carol did something to piss him off and he just makes some offhanded comment. He literally made effigies of her, taped tannerite to the crotch of it, and then blew it up. He was bringing out a blow-up doll with her face on it and then shooting it in the head. It clearly went beyond that. It is something he fixated on for quite a long time. And, if you do that long enough and people don't, no one around him steps in and says, man, that's not cool, you gotta relax, then, of course, it gets more and more extreme.
Right. But even then, like, that was obviously fucked up. And we were watching it, and I was like, whoa, like, what the fuck is going on here? But I still don't think if he did not have that, like, push from, like, Jeff and James, like, oh, well, you notice she goes on this bike trail all the time. Like, we could go on ahead and just bump her off. Like, we could actually go out here and do it. I don't think...
Well, if I'm remembering correctly, it was Joe who originally brought it up. Like, how could we kill this bitch? So he floated the idea, what if we actually did it? And then, of course, Jeff did, of course, encourage this by looking up the bike path she rides on, you know, seeing that it's mostly deserted when she's around on it, stuff like that. So, of course, they encouraged it, but the difference between entrapment and, you know, just encouraging it's a fine line, I'll be honest. But I don't think they crossed the line into entrapment because it was his idea in the first place. You know, entrapment is if Jeff had been like originally, you know, what if we actually did kill her? You know, and then Joe was like, yeah, that might be entrapment.
Right.
But from what I understand, if I'm remembering correctly, it was Joe's idea originally.
Right, but like I said, I feel like he wouldn't have, like, even gone through with it. Like, the stuff he was doing was obviously fucked up. I'm not defending what he was doing with the effigies and the dildos and you know, every 5 seconds going, that bitch, Carol Baskin. But, you know, I don't think he actually would have paid somebody or done something. I think it was mostly just talk.
Speaking of that bitch, Carol Baskin... the amount of memes that agree with Joe Exotic, and I don't know, I mean, of course, a lot of them have to be, you know, taking the piss, as a British person would say, but there are too many for it to all be, you know, just poking fun at Joe Exotic. Some of them have to genuinely believe Carol Baskin's in the wrong. And it's just crazy that people in America still don't understand that just because someone is the main character in something, a documentary, a show, whatever, does not mean you should root for them. It doesn't mean they're the good guy. Carol Baskin is the good guy in this.
Well...
Or a good woman, I should say.
Well, we have slightly differing opinions on this, and we've been arguing about this back and forth a little bit whenever Tiger King comes up. But Carol definitely, allegedly, I should say, I don't want to get sued, but I'm pretty sure she killed a husband somehow. Her old husband, her old man. So basically, the story of this is, in the documentary, is Carol married this rich older guy. I'm pretty sure he was substantially older than her at the time, because old boy already had a wife and grownish kids, or they were, like, you know, old enough to be like, huh. But he ends up leaving his family for Carol, and they end up getting married. The dude has, you know, cats or whatever, and you know, Carol was along with that, selling the cats or whatever, petting and all that. But then she kind of had a change of heart. I mentioned that. He's giving me a look.
We have very different views.
Yes, y'all will see in a second. But so basically, the husband suddenly ends up missing a little bit after he wants a divorce, and he tries to file a restraining order. He just kind of disappears, and then after a while, I think it was like, what, 5 years, maybe less?
Yeah, I believe 5 years.
So if I'm remembering correctly, about 5 years, she declares him dead, switches over some assets, gives his old family a little bit of dough, keeps the rest of it the cats. She opens up, you know, Big Cat Sanctuary, and yeah.
Big Cat Rescue.
Big Cat Rescue. Sorry, my bad.
So, my views are, I don't think there's any solid evidence that this man was killed. You know, it's not outside the norm that some people, when they have that amount of assets, can just run off and disappear. And no one really knew how much money this man really had. And then the other thing, I don't believe, even if she did kill him, even if, that it may have been entirely wrong. You see, Carol Baskin was put in an impossible position. She's had a change of heart, and this is something you didn't mention, but he also had his plan was...
Oh, this part, yeah, my bad.
Yeah, run down to Costa Rica, where the laws are more lax on big cat breeding, selling, that type of thing, and then take the big cats with them. So she now saw this as abuse. She's cared for these animals most of her life at this point, because I believe, she was something like in her early 20s when they got married?
Yeah.
So she's been in this for a while. So she sees these animals as family. As anyone with pets can attest, you live with an animal long enough, you see it as an extension of your family to a certain degree. So it was an impossible position he had put her in. She believed he was going to take these animals and continue mistreating them, and there was nothing she could do to stop it unless, he goes missing. So I'm going to go ahead and drop my hot take. If she did kill him, I understand why. I will not go all the way and say completely justified, but I see it. I can see it.
Yeah, and this is where we have a bit of differing opinion. Because, if we do go with that motive, which is probably true, I would say, why not just divorce him? Because if, she just take half. She just literally take half. And then she would probably still get the cats, especially if she was like, ba-bam, he's animal abusing, hello, thank you, can I has...
If the business was in his name, those are considered business assets. And I don't believe business assets are split.
Oh, well, that I wouldn't know.
I'm not a divorce lawyer, so please don't,
If any divorce lawyers are watching, let us know. That way, if we ever get married and I decide to divorce him, I know how to protect myself.
But, yeah, so... And then the other thing that is incredibly important to remember, most of the people in town, we never hear about anybody from her town where she lives speak about this. You hear some officers, say, oh, we kind of suspected, but we didn't really find anything. Which is, of course, what officers are going to say, Because, of course, that's the first place you look. It's the first person you suspect, the people closest to the, disappeared. And you do your little investigation. But they didn't find anything. They did find his car parked near an airport. And it was known that he owned planes. And even though he no longer held a pilot's license, he did at one time know how to fly. That's another thing. And we don't know how many planes he had. That's one of the big things that's kind of confusing. A lot of his assets seem to be in the dark. We know he was a millionaire, but we have no idea to what degree, how many millions.
Not even the people that worked for him knew exactly how much he had.
It was said he buried money, maybe even gold, silver, by one of his friends, his past employees. So, we have no idea what he had or didn't have. And, why would you bury stuff out there unless you were going to run off with it one day? A normal person doesn't bury their money somewhere like they're Walter White. Not to imply that this money is dirty or anything, but that's not something a normal person does. It's somebody who maybe wants to run off one day, leave their options open, might do. So, of course, I'm not an expert. And then the other thing is, so the officers and the guy's lawyer, of course, the guy's lawyer, he's not a cop, so he's totally on his client's side. He totally believes Carol Baskin killed him, probably because he has some stake in it. He was getting paid by this man. And not only that, but, maybe if all these assets were seized, he might end up getting to divvy it up. Because he was his lawyer at the time, so, he might be in it for a piece of that. And then the only other source saying, yeah, she definitely killed her husband is Doc, Joe Exotic, Jeff Lowe, all people with a vested interest in taking Carol Baskin down because she had made it her life's mission to
But
end.
also, to be fair, the family, his old family was also like, and I know you have like other thoughts about that, because like, you know, ex-wife could be mad that she took my husband away. The kids could be like, oh, it took my father away. But I don't know. With the family suspecting it, and then just kind of the circumstances, even though you do make a compelling argument, I still think she did that shit.
To finish what I was saying, they all have a vested interest in taking her down because she's trying to take down the illegal activities they're doing, and also attempting to pass a law that would make even more of what they're doing illegal. And as for the family that you bring up, you know, the family, if they're against the spouse, will always claim whatever they're going to claim. I've dealt with a little of this when my father died, and it was completely innocuous. He committed suicide. Trigger warning. I should have said that beforehand. But, you know, we were blamed on our side of the family for that when it was entirely him. You know, it's not little 7-year-old me's fault, or my 5-year-old sister, or my mother. But yeah, so the other side of the family, if they don't necessarily trust you, which it was clear they didn't even before this, of course they're going to believe some outlandish thing with, as I said before, no evidence pointing to Carol Baskin other than she was the last person to see him, which isn't much. They were married. They were living in the same house. I mean, duh, of course they were going to be. She was going to be the last person to see him.
But the circumstances of the restraining order, and also, you know, him wanting the divorce, also don't look that great on her. Like, I see what you're saying.
Oh, yeah, because he had a side piece down in Costa Rica, apparently.
That's right.
Another reason he might want to run. Because if she knew about this, that looks bad in a divorce court, as you mentioned.
Well, that's true. Good point.
He might have said, oh, it might be better to just take my money and run.
You do make a compelling argument, but I don't know. It's just something. There's just something about Carol that doesn't seem right to me, and I don't know. We've had this discussion before, and every time I say that, like, he gives me the death glare. But I don't know. There's just something. I'm sure there's other people out there that can agree with me. There's just something that just doesn't, like, I don't know what it is about her. I don't know if it's, you know, because she seems like a little smug and, like, snooty to me, a little sanctimonious. I can understand why, though, you know, because of her cause and everything like that. I appreciate what she does, I think. And I think a lot of the things about the rescue were kind of misconstrued as well. Just to clear up, because I feel like the rescue kind of got a bad rap. So with the environment, a lot of people, especially with videos that I've watched and seen, complain about kind of the way it looks. It's not like clean like a traditional zoo. You know how everything's like cut and pretty and everything like that. But in the documentary, she does explain that that's kind of how a tiger's natural or other big cat's environment is supposed to be. They like to hide and stuff. They like to not be seen all the time and have privacy and stuff. So I felt like that was an unfair point.
Yeah, and I'll bring up, there was an AMA on Reddit from an ex-employee shortly after the series, you know, released. And this ex-employee, I believe she was an intern there for a year or two.
Right.
Mentions it was fully accredited. And not only that, but they talk about the smaller little pens that you see them eating from in the show that Joe Exotic calls out as the place they spend their whole lives, when that's not true at all, really. They just do that to separate the cats when they're feeding, unlike Joe Exotic's, you know, farm or whatever. I mean, a reserve, I say reserve in quotes.
His zoo. We can call it
his zoo. His zoo. I don't even believe it meets the standard for a zoo, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
But they do that so the cats don't have to fight over food. Each of them feeds in their own little area, and they don't have to fight over it. They have enough food, and not only that, but you see the smaller pens. They don't ever show the bigger one, I believe. But they mention there's a couple acre pen that the cats are rotated through. So they'll spend, a little bit in the smaller ones so that, a handful of the big cats can be in the larger one, and then they rotate out. So they each get time in the bigger one. And as you mentioned, the overgrowth is just to simulate their natural habitat. These cats are used to hiding. It's not like a zoo where
there's no real privacy for the animals.
Yeah, there's no privacy because the animals are meant to be seen, which is also in and of itself wrong. These cats need privacy like any living being. So, yeah. And there's nothing wrong with Carol Baskin's, Big Cat Rescue. It's very humane.
And a lot of people were complaining about the volunteers not being paid. But I feel like no one really complained about Joe's workers being underpaid. People did complain about Doc Antle, but we'll get to him in a second. No one, and I'm not defending it, but a lot of interns, volunteers don't get paid, which I don't agree with. I think everyone should be paid, but I believe Big Cat Rescue does provide them with housing, meals, classes, right?
Yes, they give them classes when they come in, and this was mentioned in the AMA, not the series.
Right, yeah.
And they're also paid, a stipend weekly for food, so they are able to buy food, and also, indeed, are given housing on site.
So it's not utter complete bullshit, these people are just coming in, working extremely long hours and not getting something back for it, which I also felt was a little unfair. I'm not even, hiding it. I'm not the biggest fan of Carol either, but I felt like she was portrayed a little bit unfairly, compared to everyone else, aside from one other person that Matt doesn't agree with.
Yeah, and also, every nonprofit does this, because these nonprofits that are in it for the welfare of the animals, these animals take a lot of money to take care of, especially big cats. I believe it's thousands of dollars a day just to feed them. These animals can eat pounds of food per day. And then the other thing is multiple lawsuits going on at the same time. Them flying out to meet lawmakers to try and pass the Big Cat Act or whatever it's called. None of that is cheap.
Yeah, and she's feeding them actual good food. She's not doing Joe and giving them fucking meat from a Walmart truck or roadkill or cows that didn't make it to production. So
yeah, which basically means they're diseased, not fit for human consumption.
So I mean, in that respect, Joe is not better, So, I mean, I guess that's all I have to really say about that bitch, Carol Baskin, as Joe would say.
Yeah. So do you want to move on to Doc Antle?
Yes. I have lots to say about Doc Antle. So, basically, Doc's personality is he went to India for a little bit, and he, became one of those, I'm not going to call him, a fake Buddhist, but he has, this enlightened, intelligent, personality types. And he does seem likable. I mean, a lot of these people do seem likable and charismatic in some ways. Joe is very charismatic. If he wasn't a complete shit show, Joe might be cool to hang out with every once in a while to laugh at him. But anyway, so Doc's whole deal is he has his kind of whole zoo. He's got elephants, I believe he's got chimps, and obviously the big cats, which was pretty much the focus of everything. Doc's a little shady because essentially he is running a cult. Essentially a cat cult. So he gets these barely legal girls, 17, 18, gets them in young. Oh, you can come and work for me. He works them from 8 a.m. till midnight every day. He pays them very little. He picks out their outfits. He changes their names. And there was one girl in the documentary that came out to speak about him, and she mentioned all this. She also mentioned changing the names or whatever, that kind of the best way to get anywhere at Doc's establishment is to kind of, sleep with him. So that's what a lot of the girls would do. They would sleep with him. He's very playa. So essentially, Doc is running a sex cult there.
Yeah. He brings in the girls super young, before they've really become independent, so that they become dependent on him. They live there on site. They change their names, how they look. The one woman mentioned there was...
Oh, the breast implants.
Yeah, these breast implants that she did not consent to, that they just decided, yeah, you're going to get these.
And the only reason why she agreed to it was so she could get some rest. Like, how fucked up is that? That, like, you're like, you know what? I will get implants if that means I can, like, chill for a few days, Like...
Yeah, and then, as you mentioned, a very charismatic individual. Because that's how you draw people in. You start to feel for the animals. You want to take care of them, blah, blah, blah. This guy seems powerful because he controls all these animals. He's rich. He has this beautiful thing going. Just an absolute predator, in my opinion.
Yeah.
All of these guys, really, to a degree, absolute predators.
And let's not forget, as I forget... Oh, and let's not forget the cult classic, they're free to leave at any time.
Yeah. Yeah, not really. Not really. Because how are you going to get a job with your now very odd name and the fact that you have no work experience and the fact that you live here?
And make very little money. He pays them very little, so the odds of, like, even if a girl wanted to get out, how would she afford to get out unless someone was there to help her?
Yeah. Right out of the old cult playbook.
I believe he did. Didn't he euthanize the cubs as well?
Yeah.
I use euthanize loosely.
They all do it. It's one of the things, because the cubs are only useful for so long. And then after that, you either sell them or put them down.
So... Yeah, so he was definitely, and I think Joe even had documents about, like, cubs he sold to Doc, and I think, like, other dirt on Doc as well, which kind of made me, like, scratch my head a little in the documentary, because obviously Joe went to jail for this, the attempted murder charge, and then he also went to jail for, 19 counts of, like, animal abuse and things like that. Particularly for the way he euthanized, and I use that word loosely, the lions and tigers. But yeah, so it looks like Doc was doing the same shit, but it kind of surprised me that Joe would kind of turn on him, because it seemed like Doc was one of his supporters. Like, nah, Joe's too stupid for that. Like, they were clearly bros, so...
Well, Doc was constantly insulting Joe.
Well, that's true.
Calling him a simpleton, stuff like that. But they were on the same team so far as they were doing the same crimes, that same horrible shit. So, yeah, and also it doesn't surprise me that Joe had stuff on him. They probably all have stuff on each other, because, that's your get out of jail free card. If you can be an informer, if the police don't want you that badly. But unfortunately for Joe, they wanted Joe.
And people were willing to turn on Joe like that, so...
Well, they're all criminals.
Yeah.
If you don't give a crap about the animals, of course you're not going to give a crap about your fellow criminals doing the exploiting with you. So, yeah, it doesn't surprise me. And it doesn't even surprise me that Joe was bitter that only he went down, which is why I believe he, it's not that he had a change of heart. Oh, I want to do the right thing. It's more of his ego. If I'm going down, I want everyone else to go down with me. Pretty much, in my opinion. I mean, it is the right thing for him to come forward and speak with PETA so they can begin their investigations. And it mentions at the end that
Doc got raided.
Yeah, got raided by the FBI, so it clearly led to something good.
Yeah, so hopefully Doc and Jeff and that other dude will be right in that cell next to him.
Yeah, and we'll pass that Big Cat Safety Act as well. That would be pretty great.
Do you want to explain what the act is?
It would make breeding illegal, or maybe I think that might already be illegal. Maybe the sale. I'm not sure. But there are some aspects of this that are still technically legal, other aspects of it not. But it would basically make sure the whole thing is shut down.
And I also found it pretty interesting that to switch over to the animals themselves real quick, because they're honestly the true victims in all this, not Joe Exotic, because it's obvious no one except for maybe Carol and the one guy, the drug dealer guy, which you disagree with.
Yeah, let me interject real quick. That's one thing that's really saddened me about this. And I've been on other vegan, forums or whatever, on Reddit. I am vegan, by the way. I have to mention it. It is the law that I must mention it at some point. And now you know. I look forward to hateful comments if this ever gets big. I'll fight you all day long.
And he will too. He's not kidding.
Yeah.
Don't worry, guys. I have control of the account.
But you don't have control over me. I will comment with my own account. I will come in there.
Oh, he does has his own accounts. Damn.
But that's the big thing that's really saddened a lot of us, that all the focus is on Joe Exotic. All the focus is on Carol Baskin. These other big, bombastic human people that weren't being mistreated in any way, shape, or form.
Well, there were some people that weren't mistreated, which we will talk about in a little bit.
Yeah, the employees definitely. The lower level employees were definitely getting mistreated at any one of these places, except Carol Baskin's. Yeah. But yeah, no one really talks about the real victims here, the cats.
Yeah, and
the cats. The whole reason for this show.
And it's also... Go ahead, sorry.
The plight of the big cats, and it's almost totally forgotten.
Yeah, and I was surprised to know that, like, when they finally interjected, like, oh, hey, by the way, it's not just about the people, there's animals here too. Except for when they were being talked about as accessories, essentially. But I was surprised to know there's more in captivity or, like, owned as opposed to being out in the wild, which is pretty fucked. If you ask me, like...
Yeah.
Like, these are big boys. Like, when you watch the documentary, you'll see the scope of how big these things are. And to think that, they're being holed up, even if they're, like, owned by rich people on these big estates and mansions and all that. Like, that's still not their natural... and it's not where they belong, So, like, that's pretty sad to me.
Yeah. Yeah, Netflix did its token little 5 minutes of the very end, just text on the screen. Oh, by the way, here's some more about the plight of the big cats. And the entire rest of the focus was just on Joe Exotic and these other big characters.
And I guess we can talk about some of the more minor characters, quote unquote. Not that they're minor, I guess we can start with Joe's husbands, because that will take a pretty good chunk of time, and then everyone else should probably take, like, a little less. Yeah, so Joe's street drugged up husbands. Which I think makes him no better than Doc Antle as well, because he was essentially doing the same thing to, these young straight guys who ended up marrying him, who had no interest in his pee-pee. And, probably still, well, we don't know if they were physically doing things with him, but I would assume, and, drugging them up with, like, meth and giving them ATVs and guns and stuff. And they were also on the younger side, so barely legal as well. 17, 18, maybe 19, 20. and bringing them on, and yeah, just keeping them so drugged up and stuff that they don't realize, hey, there's a big world out here.
Yeah, less of a more control over the women that Doc Antle had, the kind of financial and, you live here type of vulnerability. Just kind of just the same thing, but with using their drug addictions to lure them in and keep them there, because they know they can always get their drugs there. And as anyone who might ever have tried drugs knows, drugs are expensive. So the same kind of forced dependency, just based upon drugs more than anything else. It's the same type of predatory behavior as we see from Doc Antle.
And the first husband seems to be doing all right now that he's got away from Joe.
Covered up his tattoo.
Covered up his tattoo. Got some new teeth.
Yeah.
So he's living his best life, which is unfortunately what we could not say for the second husband, Travis.
Yeah.
Trigger warning, he did commit suicide, and they did show the suicide in the documentary. Now that I think back on that, I don't know how I feel about them showing that.
Well, you don't see it in any grisly detail. You don't see Travis shoot himself, because it happens off camera, but you see Joe Exotic's campaign manager.
Because he was running for president at the time.
And then later ran for, I believe, governor.
Yeah.
And you see his reaction. He's for some reason that I cannot fathom, stayed on at the zoo even after the campaign was over. And yeah, they were hanging out in the office one day, and Travis was playing around with the gun and shot himself accidentally, it seems. And all you see is this other guy's reaction as it happens.
Yeah, and then I do think Joe was a little choked up after he died. There was this one scene in the documentary where he made Thanksgiving dinner for everybody in the community, and then he snuck off for a moment to cry, and I thought that was genuine because Joe seems to want all the attention. So I think if it wasn't genuine, he would have stayed out in front, boo-hooed. But
up until you find out later on during the whole talking about the planned killing of Carol Baskin that part of this may have been planned literally right outside that I believe it was Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
Right outside, he was talking about this thing.
And also, he got married 2 months later again to another young boy.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say boy, but another young man, clearly younger than him.
Yeah, I believe the closest you ever see him show empathy was that moment. And of course it wasn't real, because somebody like that doesn't have empathy, I believe, with how he treats the animals and everything.
And the topper on the shit cake with that was when he married this new young man. He invited Travis's mother to the wedding, had a photo op with her, and then after that, never talked to her again.
Yeah, basically, so he could say, oh, see, his mother was okay with this, so I'm good.
Yeah, and that was really shitty to me. I was like, how you so torn up, and 2 months later, you're out here marrying another young guy, going, oh, I love you, you're the best, darling. No.
So now, speaking of empathy for the people around you, this would be a good chance to segue over to another person he showed literally no empathy. The infamous meme now, I am never going to financially recover from this. His immediate reaction after an employee gets his arm ripped off by a tiger at the zoo.
Yeah, so, the employee staff, his, he got bit, and his arm pretty much got not tore off, but, his arm was pretty damaged, and, he had the choice of doing reconstructive surgery, or just taking the hand. He was like, fuck it, just take the hand, and then I'll go back to work. because he didn't want, Joe to suffer, get into trouble for it. And, also that looks bad on the zoo. No money coming into the zoo means the animals aren't being taken care of. So Saf made that sacrifice basically in order to save Joe's ass. Like, didn't sue, didn't, was just like, it's cool, I'm just gonna get back to work.
Also, there was a minor controversy after the release. Saf is apparently misgendered in the show. It refers to him as her when they are transgender, I believe. So it is definitely him that you say, not her.
Yeah. So, I mean, that obviously sucked. And let's talk about, I think his name was Rick Kirkman, if I'm thinking right, if that was his name. The guy who kind of produced Joe's show.
Ah, yeah.
He also got boned. And I also want to talk about that because this part fucking made me mad. So, basically, with this deal, Joe was doing web shows or whatever. This guy came in to produce it. He was doing a reality show. And then when stuff started hitting the fan with Carol and she had filed a lawsuit against him, a lot of the stuff was in this enclosure for the alligators, which had the computers, video, all of that, which could incriminate Joe. Joe went to a lawyer, told him all this, and the lawyer said, well, you know what you have to do. And then, of course, the enclosure suddenly blows up, gets on fire, getting rid of all of the tapes that this man had, any kind of records that Joe had, of course, all his stuff, and, of course, I think most importantly, killing the alligators, and then blaming old boy and pretty much running him off the zoo.
Yeah. It serves multiple purposes for Joe. It destroys evidence of illegal activity, destroys records of illegal activity, and also he gets to blame these animal rights people, as he always calls them, destroying part of his zoo. There's no doubt in my mind, I will say, I believe with my whole heart, either Joe or one of Joe's people did that.
And I would agree, because, that shit was too shady to me. Just conveniently, after you go to the lawyer, you're like, you know what? Then the lawyer saying, oh, you know what you have to do, and then fucking it all of a sudden exploding, and then you have the scapegoat of this poor guy who just pretty much, took his dog and left.
Yeah.
I felt really bad for him. I saw on a Twitter thread that someone I was following put talking about it, that someone who personally knew that guy said he did have a mental breakdown after that as well. So that's pretty fucked,
Yeah, he mentions it in the show as well.
Oh, he did mention it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, pretty much, the people working under Joe, the animals, and I guess anyone truly working with any of these people, lost. Which I think is what should have been the focus instead of, kind of the crazy characters in, the big cat trade. While I think it is important to expose these people and have us know about them, at the same time, I feel like it could have been more balanced and focus on the true victims of all of this.
Yeah, the cats. I find it hard to really feel too bad for anyone working for any of these people, because they're all doing these illegal things that they know are wrong. The employees know they're wrong. But, Doc Antle, Joe Exotic, you can't do something like this, something of this scale, on your own, alone. Those employees help in these illegal activities, stuff that they must surely know or at least suspect is illegal or wrong. So, when they're participating, I find it hard to feel bad for them.
I do, because I feel like a lot of them did stay on for the animals. Like the one guy said, he was just there to deliver, meat. And then he ended up staying on there. So I honestly think the animals in some way were used as a manipulation tool,
Yeah, but, you can walk away at any point and it would do the animals more harm. I mean, the animals more good than, you staying there would have. Because by you staying there, you're continuing to support it. You're continuing to help this man who has very few people left, in the case of Joe Exotic, to help him out. Because he's known as kind of crazy in the area. You know, you see this officer in the area basically like, oh, it's this guy again whenever they speak about him. They could have gone to the police, spilled their guts, admitted things, and maybe this whole thing could have been taken down a lot faster. All it took was Joe Exotic flipping to have Doc Antle's place raided.
True.
So yeah, I don't really feel bad for them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess...
And also, I mean, I guess they did do the right thing at the end, because I believe several of his ex-employees did testify against him in the trial.
Yeah, they did. So, I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, they did flip. But, you know, I feel sorry for a lot of them, because I don't think that's what they signed up for. Like, yeah, they were complicit. I get what you're saying, but you know how I am. I feel sorry for anybody. I'm a lighter touch than him.
Yeah, I do find it harder to feel sorry for people.
Me, on the other hand, I'm like, oh no, you poor thing. But yeah, I mean, if you want something kind of crazy to watch, like roller coaster, sensationally, kind of, and I put this in the most respectful way, trashy, then, you know, Tiger King's good. I would recommend it. You?
Yes, I would definitely recommend it. But just keep in mind, you're not supposed to root for Joe Exotic. And if there's any hero of this story, it's Carole Baskin. And let me just plug, you know, also, the person Joe spilled his guts to, everyone's favorite, PETA, who gets a bad rap. You know, you talk about Joe Exotic, you know, Doc Antle, and some of the others smearing Carole Baskin, you know. Yo, PETA is equally smeared. I just want to throw it out there, even though it's not entirely relevant. PETA Kills Animals, that website, a lot of their information is completely false, or it's twisted to fit their views. And PETAKillsAnimals.com is run by Tyson Foods, the largest chicken distributor in the United States, which PETA has done multiple investigations against, leading to several multi-million-dollar fines against Tyson Foods. So just keep in mind, if you want to help these animals, or any animals really, you need to support people like Carole Baskin and PETA. Donate, you know, volunteer your time, anything really.
Yeah, I don't know enough about the PETA situation to speak on it, so I'm a bit neutral there. Like, so honestly, because I don't have enough information myself to form an opinion.
I mean, you can go on Wikipedia. Wikipedia easily, you know,
I know, but I'm just saying in this
who
point
runs
in time,
the site, and it's Tyson Foods.
I know,
So,
but I'm just saying at this point in time, you know, like I wouldn't feel comfortable like speaking on it. So.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm just trying to say, you know, everyone out there, just keep in mind, anything bad you hear about these groups, there's always a motive behind it. There's always a motive, because they have a vested interest in continuing their business and, you know, taking down their detractors or discrediting them. It's kind of, you know, 101 in the bad people playbook. Discredit your enemies.
Alright, well, I guess we'll end on that note. But yeah, Tiger King, good. Watch it. I will be back to uploading now. Probably the next thing I do will probably be Animal Crossing related / Switch related. So look forward to that. And then we'll be back with another podcast soon. Be safe. Stay healthy. Hope you guys like this. Like and subscribe. All that good stuff. We gotta go because Dark Side of the Ring is coming on soon. So, bye. Bye.